Welcome back, everybody. Sorry, I was checking. So today we are going to be looking at kind of a difficult concept. So I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions to kind of help you get through it. So this is going to be lesson 10-5 on how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. Okay, so this is lesson 10-5, and it is solving quadratics by completing the square. Now, up to this point, we have solved quadratics by factoring, and the ones that we've done have all come out to nice, neat, pretty numbers. So these may not come out to the nicest numbers. These may come out to like fractions, or we also haven't learned how to deal with when there's a coefficient of x squared. So that may happen in these too. So I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to solve these. So our example is going to be 6x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. So here's our quadratic equation. And like I said, we haven't talked about what happens when we have something like this. You can't factor them the same way that we have been doing with the factor sum game. So we are going to solve by completing the square. So step one will always be to factor out any GCFs. So any greatest common factors. We don't have any in this particular one because there's nothing that will divide by 6 and 5 and 6. So there are none in this example. But if we did have one, we would pull them out. We would divide both sides and get rid of them completely, so we don't need them. So step two then would be to move the C to the right side. So when we did factoring, when we factored, we always had everything on the left side and made it equal to 0. In this one, we are not going to do that. So we have x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. We are going to move, remember this is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we're going to move the c to the other side. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. And we're going to get 6x squared minus 5x equals 6. So, and I'm also going to leave a little space right here. So step 3, next step. If there is an A, divide everything by the A to get rid of it. So in this case, we do have an A, right? We have an A. And so we're going to divide everything to get rid of it. So our example currently is 6x squared minus 5x. In this case, I'm going to leave a little space right here because I'm going to need that in a little bit, equals 6. So we are going to divide everything by 6. Remember, we can do whatever we want to both sides as long as we can do whatever we want to an equation as long as we do it to both sides. So now this has become 6 over 6, which is 1, so x squared, minus 5 over 6x. Don't freak out about it being a fraction. It'll be okay. Again, we're going to leave this space equals 6 divided by 6, which equals 1. All right, so step 4. Step 4 is kind of the hard one to get your kind of your brain around. So we are going to multiply the B by 1/2 and square it. Then we're going to put that answer in both the space we left, so that thing right there, both the space we left and at the end. And the reason we have to do this is whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay, so our example currently is x squared minus 5 over 6x with our space equals 1. So we're going to take our b and we're going to, it's up here so you can see it. We're going to take our b, we're going to multiply our b times 1/2, which in this case is going to give us negative 5 over 12. And then we're going to square it. Now, this number right here is very important. And we're going to use it in step 5. So we don't want to just do this in our head and not worry about it, because this number needs to be shown because we're going to use it in the next step. So if we square this, we are going to get a positive 25 over 144. We have to take that number and we have to put it in both our space and at the end, because whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. So now we end up with x squared minus 5/6x plus 25 over 144. Again, don't worry about the fractions. They're going to come out nice and neat. Equals 1 plus 25 over 144. Okay, so now if you notice, 25 over 144 is a square. It's a perfect square. 25 is a perfect square. 144 is a perfect square because we squared them. So that will always happen. So this is a perfect square. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change this back to a perfect square. So step 5. So our example at this point, I'm just going to write it up here, x squared minus 5 over 6x plus 25 over 144 equals 1 plus 25 over 144. That's where we left off at our last step. So step 5, we are going to write the left side as a perfect square. And we're going to use the b times 1/2 as the second number in the square. And then we are also going to add the right side together. So we're going to do both those things in this step. So we're going to take this guy. So I told you earlier that this guy right here is very important for the next step. This is going to be the number that goes in our square, our perfect square here. So that was the b times 1/2. That's what I'm talking about. So this is x minus the b times 1/2, which is that guy right there, minus 5 over 12 squared. That's our perfect square. This is essentially that factored. So that's all we did. We took this. If we were to actually go in and factor this out doing the like the factor sum game, which would not be fun because it's a fraction, you would get this. So I'm just telling you, it happens every time. It's not something you even have to think about. Just when you do that b times 1/2, know that that goes there. Okay. Equals, and then we're going to add the right side together. Now, this is where your calculator, you're more than welcome to use your calculator. I use my calculator because that's a big calculation anyway. So this is just 1 plus 25 over 144. Now, and we get 169 over 44. I will tell you right now, I am not planning on giving you any that do not come out to perfect squares. So if your top and bottom is not a perfect square in this step, there is something wrong. Something has happened in your problem that is going to, that is an issue. So this equals 169 over 144. Okay, so step 6. By the way, did you notice this is a square? Everything in here is a perfect square. Very nice. How do we undo squares? We undo the squares with square roots. So we are going to square root both sides. And the right side must have a plus or minus sign. So we are going to do x minus 5 over 12 squared equals 169 over 144. We are going to square root both sides. X minus 5 over 12 squared equals, we're going to add a plus or minus 169 over 144. So step 7, we are going to work out the squares and solve for x. Don't forget that there should be 2 answers, as the majority of quadratics have 2 answers. So this time we are just working this out. So we have the square root of x minus 5 over 12 squared equals plus or minus the square root of 169 over 144. And we're just going to work this out. So we know that the square root of anything squared is itself. So the square root of x minus 512 squared is just x minus 5 over 12. That was the whole purpose of that, was to get rid of the square altogether. And then this side, we have plus or minus, the square root of 169 is 13, the square root of 144 is 12. Look at that, we got rid of all of those square roots. So now we just have to solve for x. So we have x minus 5 over 12. I'm going to split these up at this point. We have a positive 13 over 12. And we have an x minus 5 over 12 equals negative 13 over 12. And so if I add 5 over 12 to both sides, I end up with x equals 18 over 12. And over here, if I add 5 over 12 to both sides, I end up with x equals negative 8 over 12. And so this guy will simplify by 3. So that gives me 6 over 4, which I know is 3 over 2. And this guy can divide by 4. So x equals negative 2 over 3. So our answers are x equals 3 over 2 and negative 2 over 3. The fact that these are opposite and reciprocals are completely a coincidence. That is not something that's normally going to happen. So that is your step-by-step instructions on completing a square. I'm going to do one more example now that we have gone through the steps. And that way you can see it done again a little faster this time. So this is 2x squared minus 13x plus 20 equals 0. So first things first, I'm going to get the 20 to this side. Gives me 2x squared minus 13x. I'm going to leave my space equals negative 20. I'm going to get rid of this 2 by dividing everything divided by 2. So this is x squared minus 13 over 2x. Leave my space right here, equals negative 10. So now is the creating the square part. So we're going to take the negative 13 over 2. We're going to multiply it by 1/2, and we're going to square it. So remember, this part, once I multiply those together, is super important. So I'm going to go ahead and write it out so that I know that I'm going to use this here in just a minute. So negative 13 squared is 169, and 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 169 over 16, add 169 over 16. So remember, now I'm going to take this. This is a perfect square. Remember, we're going to use this guy to create it. So this would be x minus 13 over 4 squared. That is essentially this factored, equals, and then I have negative 10 plus 169 over 16 gives me 9 over 16. So there's a nice, neat, perfect square right there. So we're going to square root both sides. So the square root of anything squared is x minus 13 over 4, so itself, equals, remember this is a plus or minus, so plus or minus the square root of 9, which is 3, over the square root of 16, which is 4. So then I'm going to take this, I'm going to write it in my 2 separate equations. So x minus 13 over 4 equals positive 3 over 4, and x minus 13 over 4 equals negative 3 over 4. Because don't forget, all quadratics have 2 answers. So I'm going to add 13 over 4 to both sides over here. And I get x equals 16 over 4, which comes out to nice, neat 4. And then I'm going to add 13 over 4 here. And I'm going to add 13 over 4 here. And x gives me 10 over 4, which simplifies to 5 over 2. And so therefore x equals 4 and 5 over 2. Now, if you want to know if your answers are correct, you can plug these back in and find out. So if I wanted to double check, I could do 2 times 4 squared minus 13 times 4. All I'm doing is plugging them back into my original equation up here, plus 20, and that should equal 0. So 2 times 4 squared minus 3 times 4 plus 20. Something's wrong. What did I do wrong? Oh, because it's a 13. That's why. Try that again. 2 times 4 squared minus 13 times 4 plus 20. There we go. That one equals 0. So I know that one's good. So my second one then is 2 times 5 over 2 squared minus 13 times 5 over 2 plus 20 should also equal 0. So again, 2 times 5 over 2 squared, whoops, parentheses squared, minus 13 times 5 over 2 plus 20 should also give me 0. And it does. That way I know that my answers are right. Right. If I got anything other than 0 right here, I would know that my answers are wrong and I need to go back and do something differently. So that is all to completing the square. If you didn't get this the first time, please feel free to go back and rewatch the video, take it step by step, make sure that you have the directions. This is not an easy concept, and it does take practice to get good at, because I know that there are a lot of steps to it. So if you need extra practice, I'd be more than happy to help you. If you want to come in, we can practice together, or if there's something that you're not understanding, please let me know. So until next time, we'll see you later.